Welcome everybody to the first inaugural webinar of our Digital Equity Accelerator for the US cohort. We're glad to have you here. We are going to talk a little bit about ourselves and about the programs so that we can give you an overview of what we have to offer. Then we're going to go into a general accelerator overview, and then we're going to have some time for questions and answers at the end. So please hold your questions until after the initial review, and then we can go over that in the chat. So I will hand this off to my colleague Jennifer, and she will take us from there.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon from wherever you are right now. We really appreciate you making some time to sit with us, to chat with us, and to learn more about this really exciting opportunity. My name is Jennifer Atala, and I am the project lead for the Digital Equity Accelerator, which is led out of Aspen Digital, which is part of the Aspen Institute in collaboration with HP. And my colleague Andrew is our project coordinator. And together we're going to walk you through the highlights of our application, hopefully give you some real life examples that can help inform your thought process as you're thinking about how you want to approach this application and if you're a good fit to apply. And we're really excited about the conversation we'll have afterwards, where we can engage with you as you ask questions. Andrew is going to be monitoring the question and answer field, and we will do our best to answer your questions here. And if we are unable to do so now because we don't know the answer, we will take your email and we will definitely research your questions and get back to you. I do want to make sure that everyone knows up front that if you go to our website, which is listed on the slide here, www.aspendigitalequity.org, you will find a number of resources that we were really careful to make sure were available to you. One in particular is our FAQ, our frequently asked questions, which we will be updating on a regular basis as we get more and more questions into our Digital Accelerator email inbox, as well as from these webinar conversations. So do take a look at the FAQ, take a look at our overall description. And also we have a guidelines document that is a PDF document you can find as well on our website. That document goes over each of our open-ended fields, questions in the application and some additional questions as well to give you some ways to think about how to answer those questions. So it was really important to us that you knew what you were getting into with this application and that you were as best prepared as possible to prepare your answers, which is why we created these different resources for you as well as these webinar sessions. And with that, let's move forward. So what are we doing? The Digital Equity Accelerator, as I mentioned, is led out of Aspen Digital in collaboration with HP, and this is its pilot year. So in this first year, we are going to be supporting 6 nonprofits in the US, India, and Morocco, ideally 2 from each country. Working with those nonprofits during our 4-month accelerator program with some post-program support in order to assist you in further developing your digital equity solution that addresses the digital divide in traditionally underserved communities in the areas of education, healthcare, or public health, and economic opportunity.
So to start out with, what is digital equity? Since this is at the core of the program and what we're offering, we center our mission around the definition used by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, which states that digital equity is a condition in which all individuals and communities have the information technology capacity needed for full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. Now that's fairly broad, so we've broken it down a little bit more so that we can show you what we're targeting overall. And our 4 main components are access, literacy, representation, and skills. Now this refers to digital access to obviously the internet, to technologies that enable people to connect in the modern day digital economy, to literacy, the skills needed to be able to effectively use those, navigate them, create new materials, and engage effectively with what you see. Representation, the representation of marginalized communities in discussions about the creation of digital spaces, the creation of those digital spaces in all parts of the digital economy. And skills, the ability to repair, replace, operate networks, hardware, equipment, and overall be effective digital citizens. When we bring these things together, we get a holistic picture of digital equity, and we are looking for organizations that can promote any aspect of this definition.
Thank you, Andrew. So our program is going to offer 4 key elements to each participating organization. One is 4 months of mentorship and training. So our training component is going to cover 2 broad areas. One is leadership and management training for nonprofits specifically, and really looking at what nonprofits need from the perspective of each of the country environments in which we are piloting this program, as well as training in how to design, develop, test and implement a digital equity solution. So, as you can see from our application, we are asking a lot of questions of you about what is the idea that you're bringing to the table? What do you want to bring into this program that you can further develop by working with us and with our mentors in this iterative design process? We don't want you to already have the idea fully ready to go. Otherwise, we're not sure if the program would be helpful to you, but we do need to see that you have thought through what your program, what your digital equity solution or project that you want to build during our program would look like, and why it makes sense for you to be building out that solution. And we'll get into more of that in a little bit here in the presentation. The second thing that each participating organization will receive is an over $100,000 US dollar cash award. So this will go to each organization individually, not split across all 6. Third, each participating organization will receive hardware technology directly from HP. Obviously, with the caveat that we cannot predict for you what distribution channels look like or the supply chain effect given the pandemic that we're all continuing to live through, which makes working on digital equity solutions even more important given the importance of the digital economy in our current day. But that will be something that will be mobilized as soon as our cohort is selected. And you will also notice, if you haven't already, that there is a question in our application that asks you at a pretty high level to select all the options that apply to you in terms of what type of technology you might be interested in receiving if you were to benefit from this program, as well as another option if you want to fill that in. And that's simply for us to, at an early stage, try to assess what the needs are for the folks like you who are interested in applying, and also to prepare HP so that we can try and address as early on as possible what some of these challenges might be to get that technology to the awardees. And then finally, at the end of our program, we're going to have a demo day where each of the participating organizations are going to effectively pitch their digital equity solution to a very curated audience of leaders at this demo day, including funders, and with the hope that they will gain some commitments from the folks at demo day and also be able to launch their solution that they have built and refined and tested during our program soon thereafter. And so with that in mind, we will be providing post-program support, continued interaction with us, as well as some of our mentors who are going to be working with you if you are participating throughout the duration of the program. And our mentors, I will add, are going to consist both of what we're calling growth advisors, so think about business coaches in some sense, as well as technical specialists, which could run the gamut from anything from legal expertise in each of our countries to accounting and other technical skills.
So we have a great program set up for you, but we do have some eligibility criteria that you'll need to meet to participate. Starting out with, obviously, we have 3 countries that we're targeting. You may have noticed based on our website, we're working in the United States, India, and Morocco. If you're here, in all likelihood, you're part of the US cohort. But in order to apply, we want to make sure that you're doing the majority of the work in the country that you're targeting. The threshold we're looking at is 75% or more. You don't necessarily need to be based in that country. However, you do need to be registered as a nonprofit in the country. And you need to be focused on working on either economic opportunity, education, and or public health and healthcare. We want you not necessarily to have already been working on digital equity, like we said, but to have a clear idea of what you're trying to target so that you can expand or scale programming in those areas. We want to make sure that at least one senior member of your team is able to follow all required sessions. We want to make sure, obviously, that you're fluent in English because that's what program sessions are going to be conducted in. And of course, since this is digital, that you have consistent and reliable access to the internet.
Thank you, Andrew. So what are we looking for in your applications? So again, I'm going to just remind you all that we do have a lot of this thought out already for you, including questions that you can ask yourselves as you're thinking through how to respond to some of our questions in our guidelines document, as well as on our frequently asked questions page. But overall, we're looking at these 4 things. First is the need. So how would you as an organization benefit from each of the resources that this program will be providing to you? Do you have a plan for how you might utilize these resources if you were selected to participate in our cohort? How would these resources enable you to further impact in one or more of the target communities that we care about? And that we're looking to serve with this program. Second, the project, the digital equity project idea. And there's a significant amount of time that we've spent in the application and that we know you will be spending as you're applying on this section. Obviously, again, we're not looking for you to have a fully baked idea here, but we need to see that the idea that you have makes sense for the impact that you already make, the communities that you already serve, and will further digital equity and address the digital divide relating to the target communities that we care about in the sectors that we have identified, and show that connection between the existing work of your organization and what this project could do. Again, as well, you will have seen this in our website and other places. You do not already have to be a digital equity nonprofit. But we do need to see that it makes sense that your project, which will be focused on a digital equity solution, makes sense coming from your organization. So again, here thinking about how is your project idea the right or a potential solution for the challenge that you have shared with us? Does it integrate with your organization's current mission? And are you going to be able to develop it appropriately during the course of the program and ideally be able to launch it after the program ends? Third, we're looking at impact. So we are looking at your organization's impact as it stands today. You do not need to have, been in existence for 10 years and have, very polished annual reports. In fact, we would prefer to work with organizations that are earlier stage, who could really benefit from some of the services we're going to provide. But we need to see that you have been able to understand how to measure the impact, identify how you're making impact in the communities that we jointly care about here. We're going to think about, what are your goals as an organization? What are the goals for this project? Are they SMART? What is the potential reach? How do you see this project integrating with your existing programming as well as going beyond? How can it continue to scale? So these are some of the questions that we're thinking through. And again, you do not need to, sit and answer every single question that you could come up with, but this is just to give you a general idea of how to approach effectively pitching us with what you're able to do here and how you're able to use your project to continue furthering impact in these communities. And then finally, your team. So why are you the best organization to do this job, to address this particular challenge with the project idea that you have? Are you already integrated into the target communities that we jointly care about? Where is your organization? Who do you serve? Are your business practices already professionalized to some degree? Do you know how to, again, measure your impact? What does your accounting system look like, et cetera? Are you at some baseline level of professionalism that you're able to then effectively progress during the course of our program? So keeping in mind as well that this is only going to be a 6 organization cohort as part of our pilot year. We do hope that after we learn from this pilot year, we can continue the program and expand it. But as of now, we're going to be very intentional about who those 6 organizations are. in general, but also vis-a-vis one another.
That concludes our brief presentation. We hope that that was enlightening and gave you a good overview of the accelerator. Now we're going to move on to questions. So please post all questions in the question and answer box in the chat, and we will go through them one by one. And it looks like we have a few already. So I'm going to read these out loud and we can get started. One attendee asks, our organization only uses Apple products and are unsure if we can use HP products. Will this affect our consideration for the grant?
We have not gotten that question yet. That's a new one. Off the top of my head, I don't see how that would affect your application or your consideration, but it's a question that we will now note, and we can actually go back to our colleagues at HP and see what they have to say. But you know, when you're thinking as well about the hardware offering that is a part of this program, it's not just hardware that you could use as an organization, although that is obviously key to your own growth and sustainability. It's also thinking about hardware needs of the communities that you serve. And so as we're considering what it means to have digital access, digital literacy, there are any number of ways to think about how the hardware needs that you would suggest that you need in the application could be used to further impact in the communities that you serve. So for example, a really sort of simple example is that if you're an organization working on digital literacy for girls in an underserved community, perhaps having, you know, as part of your ask here, computers or tablets that would be used in, you know, the education system that those girls are in, or whatever your program is, that could be part of it too. So it doesn't have to just be hardware that's used at the for the nonprofit organization itself. Ideally, you would be able to utilize the you know, this part of the program award, but we can definitely ask that question and get some more information from you. I know you've listed yourself as anonymous, but if you want to, if we could figure out a way to get your email, or you can actually just email us at the email here on the slide, digitalaccelerator@aspeninstitute.org. If you want to email that question to us again, somebody from our team will get back to you after we've raised the question internally.
Another person asked, does this need to be a new program in order to be competitive? And I'll state off the bat, the answer is no. If you have impact, but you have a new idea that you want to scale, that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for expansion or scaling existing programs. So if you've been around for ages, but you're just getting into digital equity, that is completely fine. You don't need to be a brand new baby organization to join.
Yeah, and to add to what Andrew shared here, you do need to have proven impact as an organization. And so if you have not yet gotten and you also need to be registered. So if you have not yet registered in the US as a 501c3, for example, you're not going to be eligible this year. But you know, hopefully that would mean if we do continue the program and you've been able to gain some traction and test out your own ideas and build some kind of track record over the next year or two, that would be fantastic for a future program. See, the next one, is there a time limitation for measuring impact? For example, our outcomes are long-term and we will not fully see the results until 3+ years after the intervention. We do have short-term benchmarks in process. Great. You know, I think what we need to see is we need to see how you're thinking through that measurement, right? So obviously, you know, just to think about from the international development context, for example, there's a really big difference between measuring impact in quote unquote democracy and governance programs versus a microfinance program, right? You're naturally going to have different timelines and timeframes. What you can share with us is what your log frame or what your you know, measures of performance and and effectiveness look like for your existing program. And you know, as you're thinking about during that section where you're going to tell us or share with us what your current idea is, and it could change during the program, but what your current idea is for a digital equity solution, think through what it would mean for you and how you would want to measure that impact and include what that time frame would look like for you. We really just need to see, impact, but we need to understand how you've reached that conclusion, how you thinking through how to measure impact, and sort of see that process for you. And if hopefully we're answering your questions, and if we're not, please go back into the chat and add on.
Yes, by all means. We have another attendee who asked, would a public university be eligible to apply? I think we're probably going to need a little bit more information on this one because the program is obviously for nonprofits. Now, if your university has a nonprofit affiliated branch or organization underneath it, we could potentially see that working, but otherwise it's going to be not really a direct fit with the program and what we're teaching.
Yeah, I think so it's going to depend on how, it depends on who within the university is applying. I know there are a number of interesting programs in universities that are, various legal registrations, right? And so if you have a center within a university that's registered as a C3, that would be great, go for it. If it's something else, please email us at the email digitalaccelerator@aspeninstitute.org with that very specific question of what the registration of that program looks like. And then we can take that back to the legal teams on our end to see if it would be possible to support you if you were to be selected.
Next question we have, are tech training and workforce organizations being considered for this grant, or is that too outside of the scope? My indication, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, is that would not be outside of scope, especially if you're working on digital equity and how that can tie into economic opportunity. That would be directly up our alley. In fact, that meets 2 of our top criteria.
Yeah, 100%. That would be considered. Again, it's are you able to show us, so again, thinking about impact, but when we think about, we're telling you our parameters that we've set up so far to help guide the process. We're really excited. We know we don't have all the answers, and we know we do not know everything about digital equity, hands down. So we're really excited as part of this process to learn from you how you're defining digital equity, or in this case, maybe digital inclusion, digital representation in the digital economy, in the workforce, related to technology, representation and inclusion in the actual tools themselves, whether it's something like an avatar in a VR training environment or otherwise. So absolutely, workforce development would be a part of that. It just really comes down to what is the core of your work, and does it align with our target communities and sectors, which this would be an economic opportunity in the least. And just sharing with us more about how that ties directly to your definition of digital equity and reaching or meeting the needs within our current digital divide in the communities that you are working in.
One thing I'll note, I see that a bunch of participants are posting questions in the general chat. Please keep it to the Q&A chat so that we can get you in the queue. We will try to get everyone, but it's a lot easier if we can keep them all in one place. The next one that we have is, would an organization registered in the US but doing work in India be eligible? Or would the project need to be focused in the country in which the org is established, registered? The project does not necessarily have to be in the country that it's established or registered in, but we do want it to be in the country where you're doing the majority of your work, as we mentioned before. We're kind of doing this to prioritize organizations that are really locally embedded and enmeshed in their communities. So if you want to apply for India, but you're based in the US, as long as you are an India-focused organization and can demonstrate that, then we do want you to apply.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll just add to that, if you haven't had a chance to look at the application yet, we do have a question in there that is a multiple choice question, which asks if 75% or more of your work is in one of our 3 target countries. And the reason for that question is to help us define who we're going to, select. It's one of the many factors we're considering. If you are, and you'll just have to also tell us in that application, what your registration looks like. And it would be helpful to us, actually, if you could also share with us, if you were to be selected and to receive the cash award, how are you able to get the cash award to India? One thing that for this particular person or organization that's asking this question, organizations based in India, they do need to be FCRA licensed in order to receive funds. And so we would just need to understand a little bit more in depth from you how your organization how the Indian-based communities would benefit, that you're working with would benefit from this program, given that you are based in the US. We would just need to understand that a lot more, if that makes sense.
Great. Moving on to the next question, is demo day for all applicants or just for the 6 selected organizations? That is going to be for the 6 selected organizations in the sense that they're the ones participating in demo day. We're still working on the format of demo day itself. Whether or not any part of that is publicly accessible is another question. But applicants are not going to be participants in demo day, meaning that they're not going to be obviously pitching and trying to connect with funders in that sense.
Yes, correct. Next question. Would programming centered on building access to this grant's requirement for services delivery in English be something, access to this grant's in English be something that could be included in a proposal, for example, an ESL class to teach adult ELLs enough language to engage in coursework in English focused on bridging the tech gap?
At a first glance, it sounds like there's definitely some intersection with our program.
Yeah, the question, I'm having a little bit of a hard time completely understanding the question, but if there's an aspect of your programming and, well, if there's an aspect, if your project would directly relate to, for example, digital literacy for that community of folks that you already work with in your ESL classes, what could be interesting to see there is what your proven impact is in training your ESL class participants in English and their success utilizing their training in participating in the economy, for example. Who is participating in your ESL classes? Are they from the target communities that we are looking to serve? And how would you then leverage your success there into a, for example, digital literacy project or component? That to me would make sense.
Great. Looking at the next question, we have, can you please share examples of metrics and outcomes expected to emerge as a result of this initiative, and how might orgs go about demonstrating impact and sustainability? So examples of metrics and outcomes expected to emerge as a result of this initiative, meaning what we hope to achieve, I think, is how we interpret that. Obviously, we hope to achieve digital equity in the sense that we can have scalable orgs that are looking to take initiatives that maybe we couldn't grow sufficiently without the organization, without the accelerator's help. And by giving them these resources, they're able to really impact the lives of the community members around them. How might orgs go about demonstrating impact and sustainability? It really depends on the sector that you're working in, but we want to understand, have you been measuring your outcomes? Do you have a framework for looking at your own impact? Even if that impact hasn't necessarily manifested yet, do you understand what you're looking for? And do you understand what your goals are and how you're going to measure that? Having that framework in mind is important because that shows us that you're doing the sort of thinking and the sort of legwork necessary to succeed that we want to invest in.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I will also add here, there are two different, so there are potentially 3 questions in there. One is, how do we, as the Aspen Institute and HP, plan on measuring the effectiveness and the performance of our pilot accelerator program? That's one particular question, but I'll focus it in on what's most relevant to you all right now for your application, which are 2 other questions. One is, how do you as an organization demonstrate impact and sustainability? And then how do you, in your project idea, plan on demonstrating impact and sustainability? So those are 2 separate questions that do come out in the application. And so to just reiterate what Andrew said here, we do want to see, from an organizational perspective, that you have been able to measure. So there are different terminology sets to use here, but one way to think about it is there are different ways to measure both the performance and effectiveness of your programming, different ways to think about how you've measured your leadership, for example, your effectiveness at an organizational level. There are different aspects of this that you can share with us. Some organizations may have an annual report where they have outlined this, and we've provided the option in the application to upload that annual report, for example. But it's not a requirement, because we understand that to create an annual report may or may not be required given your bylaws, but also takes a lot of time. And you may be a one-person staff with a bunch of volunteers, and we want you to apply if that's the case and you meet the other requirements, for example. But we need to see how you think through those questions and what you've been able to measure so far, and what you're planning to measure over time, right? Because some of these things you're not going to know after 3-6 months of programming, or even longer, right? And that's just the nature of measuring impact. But showing us how you're thinking about that measurement and what your plan is really important. And hopefully that's helpful. From a sustainability perspective, one of the things that we are looking for is also, how does your current programming and how does this project idea that you have, how is it embedded within the communities that you are serving? Do you have partnerships, within the communities with other stakeholders that are working towards this or a similar solution? How have you how is your work intersecting with other work in your city? Or your town, or whatever it might be. There are any number of other stakeholders that are doing work. Maybe there are other funders, maybe there are some government-led initiatives or city government level initiatives, and there are a lot of different interesting things going on in the States. Maybe you have, maybe your local library has a lot of funding to do digital literacy work. Are you trying to launch a digital literacy project, and do you have a partnership with them? So thinking about, there are different ways to think about what sustainability could look like. Also, one of the things that we mention in the application and the guidelines, as you're thinking about sustainability, is funding. As part of this program, you'll receive, if you're selected, a large cash award, which is up to you how you want to use that funding. It could go towards the institutional funding of your nonprofit. It could go towards building out this particular project, probably both. But beyond this particular funding award, how are you planning to sustain the project that you're planning to launch after this program? Do you have other sources of funding? Do you have, how are you planning to continue? Are you going to, do you have some part of effectively your business plan that would allow it to be self-sustained? So those are the kind, you don't have to answer every single one of those questions, but that's how we want to see that you're thinking through questions in that way. Hopefully that's helpful. The next question, how will applications be scored or weighted? Is there an ascertain scoring criteria? Is there a certain, I think that was meant, scoring criteria? So one thing that is important for you to know, if you don't already, so first of all of the applications are anonymous. So this is an anonymized process. Even though for some of you that are putting in questions, we see your names, we will not see your names in the application. So there's no way that we can be biased in that regard towards you, for example, unconsciously or not, because we've seen your name here. That will not be happening. We are, however, scoring or evaluating, I should say, applications by each country. So if you are applying as an organization that does the bulk of your work in target communities in the US, then, which is hopefully why most of you are here. I know we've got some folks from other countries on the call that weren't able to make our other webinars, and that's awesome. I'm so glad you're here. But since this is the US focused call, folks who are, most likely you all will be evaluated against one another. So we will be scoring and evaluating by the country buckets, but that's the extent to which we will know anything about you in terms of your name or anything like that. So there's that. And yes, we will be, all of the questions are weighted on the back end and will be scored. So there are criteria there that we're going to be using internally. And maybe it's helpful just to say finally that once we have shortlisted finalists, we will have an advisory council. Our advisory council will be supporting us in the evaluation of our shortlist.
Great. Jennifer, I'm actually going to pull a couple questions from the chat just because I think that they'd be good to discuss here directly.
Great.
One, can we use a partner organization with 501c3 as a fiscal sponsor? Yes, you can. We actually have a space in the application that allows you to state that. So it's good to note that if you do not have a 501c3, but you have a fiscal sponsor, that is something that will allow you to apply.
Great. Should we just keep going down the regular chat for a minute?
Yes, let's do that.
Let's see, hold on. Jamie, I see you there. You're next up in the Q&A box. Oh, wow, we have a lot of questions in the chat box. Okay.
Oh, actually, we have someone who wants us to clarify the fiscal sponsor. Jennifer, would you mind speaking to that?
What is the question, the clarification question?
Just to clarify, what is the fiscal sponsor process? What does it mean that we can have a fiscal sponsor instead of having a 501c3?
So if you have a fiscal sponsor, maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but if you have a fiscal sponsor, you already know what that means. You do not need to go and seek a fiscal sponsor right now when we only have a month left in the application. It is not a requirement by any means, but if you're interested in what fiscal sponsorship in general means, I recommend researching it, looking at Arabella Advisors. They're an organization that consults nonprofits and fiscal sponsors. It's just another way that nonprofits can operate. And in some sense, it can, I'm probably not the best suited to explain this. I'm sure many of you on the call could explain this much better. But in some sense, it's like having let's say you're at a co-working space and you're a small startup and you don't need to buy your own printers or get your own accountant, because that's a lot of expense that you don't have money to fund from your operational budget. And so you kind of pool that together by having a fiscal sponsor. But yeah, if you do not have a fiscal sponsor, then you do not have a fiscal sponsor, and it's by no means a requirement. It's just another opportunity for folks to apply who don't themselves have a certain status.
Great. So then moving forward, can an applicant organization partner with another community agency on a proposed project? I think we're going to probably have to unpack that one a little bit more, because if you have a project that you're partnering with other organizations on, that's great. But we would want to know a little bit more about that. And we would certainly want to know how that impacts your participation in the accelerator. Does that mean that you are asking that other organization to participate in the accelerator with you? Because at the moment, we're only planning on a single organization, obviously receiving funds, training, and things of that sort. So if you wouldn't mind popping your email in the chat, we'd be happy to get back to you about that.
Great. Can a specific department or program within a much larger nonprofit organization apply? Oh, that's a tricky one. I think with a lot of these, it depends on who you are and what larger organization you're talking about. Ultimately, my instinct is to say you probably would not be very competitive, because we're not looking to fund and support large INGOs, for example. We want the organization that is participating in this program to be on some level, on par with the other members of the cohort, so that you can learn from each other and be at similar stages of growth, for example. But also, we want to work with those organizations that are most localized, which I think gets to one of the other questions here. And, coming from the communities that they are serving, and will most benefit from all aspects of the program. So that includes the cash flow. So for example, if you are, I've seen this, I'm just as off the top of my head from my own previous experience. There are certain programs I know that are part of Mercy Corps that are somehow hybrids, right? Mercy Corps is an extremely large international NGO, but they have, certain programs that kind of pay a fee into Mercy Corps, for example, to cover operational expenses and are sort of a hybrid part of Mercy Corps, but also independent. Even in that particular example, I don't think that they would be very competitive for this, because you're still a part of this larger organization that can mobilize funds on your behalf, as an example. You're welcome to email us more specifics if that's helpful, and then we can have another conversation about it. And then related to that, the next question, will national or international organizations be given more weight than local organizations? No, it's the opposite. Local and regional, so local, national, regional organizations will be given more weight, in no particular order there necessarily than international organizations. And there's a difference between an international organization, quote unquote, that's, you know, like a Mercy Corps versus you're a small nonprofit, all of your operations are in India, but you just have your 501c3 and funding base in the US and registered as a 501c3, right? So they're very different examples of what quote unquote international could mean. We're really looking at where your operations are, the bulk of your operations are, and do you have direct connection to the communities the target communities that you are serving. And related to that, the target communities that would benefit from your participation in this program and the digital equity solution that you are hoping to test and build as a part of this program. So I hope that helps answer both of those questions. But again, we are more than happy to kind of dig a little bit deeper with you on some of these questions if you want to provide more specific information, and email us at the Digital Accelerator email here.
Great. Moving on, we have a question. Could you provide a little more detail on the format structure of the mentorship and training components? For example, would it be small group sessions, one-on-one, or some combination thereof? Given examples you can share as related to some of the content of the sessions. The short answer is more information is forthcoming. To give a little bit of a longer answer, what we are envisioning is that, and Jennifer can speak a little bit more to this, you're going to be paired with essentially two separate mentors during the program. And one is going to be kind of your primary point of contact, who's going to help you develop the program overall, who's going to oversee your progress as kind of your primary mentor. The second, to some degree, will actually be a rotating position where you'll talk with more technical experts who will help you design the program as you go through this. So our goal is not so much extremely broad-based mentorship as some accelerators provide, but really focused mentorship with experts who are going to help you take the steps that you need to take your idea from either an idea or a small program to something that can really scale.
Yeah, and to add to that, because our pilot is launching in 3 very different country environments, our mentors and our advisory council members will be from each of these countries. And so you would have the opportunity to work with a technical expert or a growth advisor from the US, but also from India and Morocco. And so we're hoping that would actually be of benefit to folks as you learn from each other as well. I'm cognizant that we have less than 15 minutes left, so I hope we're going to try to burn through questions that are directly related to the application. I'm going to hop over real quick to the chat again to this question. What are you hoping comes across in the video? Will it mostly reiterate or illustrate the main points of the application? So I would first of all say, go look at the guidelines document if you haven't already. That's on our website. We've given a number of examples of questions to think through there. The video component is very specifically for your project idea, so not for your organization as a whole. That is to think through and talk us through your pitch for your project idea, your digital equity project that you would develop during the course of the accelerator. Please do not produce this. Please use a smartphone if you have access to one, which I hope you do, or something like that. We want this to, do it in selfie mode. Like we do not want this. We do not want you to take more time than you're already taking for this application, first of all. And second of all, we are fully cognizant that many nonprofits do not have resources for things like a communications person or a grants manager or any kind of video editing, anything, right? And so because of that, we've specifically asked folks to literally just use your phone to record this, and we will actually not look favorably upon overly produced videos because we've asked for them not to be, and we're trying to use this as an opportunity for folks who may not have the resources or the ability to communicate very well in English in a written application, and to do so with our kind of bulkiest, biggest, heart of the matter question in a video. And remember too that we are, getting applications from 2 other countries as well. And so this is the same application. Everyone's getting the same application here. So that's that question. And again, we're kind of blitzing through these questions. If you have follow-up questions, or if we haven't, if you want to provide more context to your question, please just email us. Our team monitors that email, and just let us know, hey, I was on the US webinar and this was my question. I think we've talked through the mentorship component. If you have more questions there beyond what we've spoken about, and if it affects your ability to apply or your interest in applying, then let us know. If you're planning on applying anyway, it might be less relevant, but I'm not sure. Let's see, next. Would an organization that is providing education and life skills to underserved children and adults through technology qualify, rather than the end goal solely being giving them technology? We need assistance selecting the best programs to facilitate online learning, providing tech support to the community, and facilitating access to technology. As I read that, my understanding is that the aspect of digital equity that you're working on is access, right? And perhaps it's also the cognitive aspect of literacy. So it sounds to me like that would qualify. But I do recommend taking, a further look at thinking through maybe how you define digital equity with your work, and then making that case in the application. But as far as I can read on the surface, that completely is applicable and very relevant to our program. Andrew, any additional thoughts on that one?
No, I think I would agree. I think one thing that's worth restating with this question, and with a lot of our questions about eligibility, does this project work? Does that project work? Our criteria are very broad. Digital equity is an issue that intersects with a lot of other issues. So we want you to make the case where, if you think that what you are doing is important for digital equity in your community, convince us. We're not going to pull down a drawbridge and say, no, this isn't close enough to what we're looking for. We are open-minded, and we're looking to see what organizations are doing what out there. So if you think you have a powerful digital equity solution or program you want to scale, show us that you deserve to be part of this program, and we are willing to hear your pitch.
Yeah, and show us where we're missing something, right? People define digital equity differently in different communities, and we want to hear what you have to say. We want to learn from you, honestly. So please do that. And I'll add a couple things just to some of the previous questions that have come up. One is, so back to the fiscal sponsor real quick. A fiscal sponsor does have to be a registered C3. So if you're working with a fiscal sponsor, then that's why they would be applicable. Secondly, on the video component, just to add to that as well, the video component, in addition to what I've shared, is just an opportunity for us to hear from you, literally, to see you, to get a taste for your personality, and also to see how passionate you are about this. So, express your passion, be yourself. It's a great way for us to get to know you better as well. And as I mentioned before, who you are and your team and why you're the best suited to do this is a big part of that. And if you're passionate about what you do, that'll definitely shine through, and that'll be helpful for us to see. Great.
The next question, what are the impact goals for the Aspen Institute? We've kind of gone through this a little bit already, but again, primarily what we're looking to do is take programs and solutions for digital equity in economic opportunity, healthcare, and education, and scale them. So we're going to be looking at how many lives are you impacting? How many people are you accelerating digital equity for within the core aspects of our definition, be it access, literacy, what have you. If you can demonstrate that you are the sort of organization that's going to produce that wide-ranging impact, you're going to help us meet the Aspen Institute's impact goals.
Yeah, that's great. I'll look at the next two together in the Q&A. How many awards will be given? Where will they be distributed? Consideration, how much consideration will be given to the organization's plan to secure funding for implementation? Are you looking to see secured funding commitments as part of the application? So 6 organizations will be selected to participate in the program, and each of the 6 that are selected will receive an over $100,000 US cash award, and that's it. They will be distributed accordingly, and all of those details in terms of, you know, the financial, all the financial aspects of that will be determined at that stage. But that's what will happen there. And in terms of organizations' plan to secure funding for implementation, so first of all, it's a large cash award. I would assume that some of this, the plan would be for you to use some of that cash award towards the implementation of this project, but it may not. And so, you know, if it is, let us know. If it's not, let us know what your plan is. Do you need to have already secured commitment for that? No. If you have, great. Like, it really depends on the context of where you're at with your development, who you are as an organization. You know, obviously part of the aim of the program is for you to further develop your idea, right? And so on some level, you might not be able to secure new funding for something that isn't finally developed. If, however, you have an institutional funder that funds a portfolio related to this particular target community, or maybe for digital equity work that you have otherwise that will be able to support funding for this solution, great. If you already have some aspect of this funded, we do want to know. But, you know, everything will be looked at in context to who you are and what you do. And that's why it's really important for us to very clearly understand who you are and what you do. But will it be weighted different, you know, more or less? No. We just want to hear from you, you know, what it is that you're suggesting, and just understand what that means as much as possible. Could you use, and so actually related to that, the next question, the over $100,000 award, you can use that towards what you wish. What we are looking for is to see that you've thought through how you would want to use that award. And then additionally, as mentioned earlier, for this actual project, we would want to understand, you know, at least what your thinking looks like as to how that project would be sustainable. So whether that involves part of this award or not is up to your discretion.
Great. We have a question about how many gifts will be distributed to each of the 3 countries. We are selecting 2 participants per country for this pilot. So for the United States, there are 2 gifts, 2 organizations chosen.
Great. You can go ahead with the next one if you want.
Great. What type of senior level team members are you wanting to be involved in the weekly 4 to 8 hours of weekly mentorship programming? Additionally, what does this 4 to 8 hours expected to look like? So Jennifer, I'll let you speak to that. My understanding is that if a person in your organization chart is a decision maker who would benefit from our trainings, we are open to different types of roles in the organization, that we are looking for senior level team members to participate.
Yeah, that's the right answer. And again, so much of this, if it's not clear already, I hope it will be clear, is related to just the context of your organization and who you are, right? So we can't tell you completely agnostic of context if, you know, your senior XYZ manager should be the one to apply or not, because we know nothing about who you are and what your organizational, structure looks like. If that person is part of your senior leadership team, for example, then that probably is the person who should be attending full time. The one thing I will just reiterate is that this person, we do need that one senior leader to commit to the entirety of the program. That's the time commitment, the work, etc. That role cannot be delegated. Obviously, if an emergency comes up or something, there should be someone to be able to fill in, etc. But that is a requirement, a pretty hard requirement. There's the opportunity for one additional person from the organization to participate, but that is not required. So for example, in the application, there is a section where you can provide the name and role, title of the person of an additional person who might be able to participate in some or all of the sessions with you. And that's great if you have that person identified, and that may help explain why you've chosen the first person, but they are by no means meant to be a substitute. It's not meant to be a handing off situation, and it is definitely not required. So don't just fill that in because you think it'll bolster your application effectiveness. It won't.
Also, since the second part of the question was, what do those 4 to 8 hours a week, or what are they expected to look like? Again, we're going to release more details on that in the coming weeks, but basically it's going to be a combination of programming. We are going to host classes or seminars that will assist you with training in various aspects of nonprofit leadership management, things of that variety. Mentorship, of course, various pitch days and practice sessions to prepare for demo day, and ultimately other activities that really dovetail with hopefully what you're already doing and what you want to do with your project. So that we can really help you prepare to scale your efforts.
Thank you. I've taken a look at a bunch of the next set of questions. And I'll just really quickly address a couple of them. No, use your organization name, etc. That is fine. That is expected. It's just from the back end, we're going to have it anonymized, if that makes sense. Service providers, that's not an applicable question to this conversation. So if there's a need to ask that elsewhere, please do send an email. Our review committee is going to be Aspen Digital, HP, and our advisory council, and we will be announcing our advisory council at a later date. So you can keep track of that on our website. From a US perspective, how do we define large nonprofit? I do believe we've answered this question already in terms of sharing with you the extent to which we are defining who we're looking for. So localized, ideally 75% or more approximately of your work is in the target areas and communities that you are serving and that are aligned with what we are looking for. And again, we are comparing US organizations against US organizations. So everything really does continue to come down to context and how you're able to present yourself to us. In terms of the selection process, we will be making announcements of who are the selected organizations approximately mid-May. The program is meant to start early June. And if you are shortlisted at that stage, so in the application, you will see that we have asked for reference information. Only the shortlisted candidates will be, only for the shortlisted candidates will those references be reached out to. Yes, it is true that a over $100,000 award will have a different impact in the US and in India and in Morocco. And that's something that actually we have all talked about considerably in our development process. And if you would like more information about what went into that process, go ahead and send us an email and we could, if that's important to you, we could talk about it. But that was intentional and we do understand that aspect of the question. So with that, I think we should probably wrap up. We have reached our 1 hour mark. So thank you all so very much for making time today to speak with us, to engage with us, to ask really, really great questions. Andrew has dropped our email here for you, which is an inbox that our team monitors. So if you have direct pertinent questions to the application process that are not answered by this webinar, by our FAQ, or by the guidelines document, then please do follow up there. And please remember that asking questions, making your name known will not give you preference in the selection process, which will be anonymized in the end. So, be mindful of your use of that email inbox. And with that, I'll wish you the best of luck. And we really look forward to your applications. We're really excited about this. We're excited about learning from you. We're excited about hearing what awesome things you guys are up to and the project ideas that you're going to bring forward. And so we really appreciate you being a part of this pilot with us. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yes, thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing your applications.